Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 338th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So even though this group has been featured on the page numerous times, I would still actually say they're a bit underrepresented due to how rich and consistent their discography is. Of course, I'm talking about hip-hop's resident band, The Roots, who I initially had on the channel within my first 10 uploads, in the form of their 1999 magnum opus, Things Fall Apart. And then a little more recently, I brought them back again to discuss their classic third LP, 1996's Illadelph Half-Life, which seems to be the top Roots project out there for a good amount of people, and I've seen it take the #1 slot in a handful of rankings online. Though, as I've said in the past, it definitely comes in second place for me personally, but to be fair, there aren't really many hip-hop albums out there in general that can stand against Things Fall Apart for me. I've also long maintained that these guys have arguably the most consistent discography in the genre, next to MF Doom, as even the moments that some would view as low points in their careers are at worst decent in my opinion. And I genuinely don't think there's any material either act has released that dips below that bar and into whack territory. You could maybe argue that the Roots hadn't quite developed their sound and niche when they put out their 1993 debut Organics, but that wouldn't last for long, as over the next few years they would grind, practice, and improve, to the point where the sophomore Roots LP, 1995's Do You Want More, could be debated as a classic itself, and they were just getting started. Some would say that the early 2000s was a bit of a stagnant point in their discography, because even though they were still experimenting and keeping up with the changing times, the fans seem somewhat divided when it comes to projects like 2002's Phrenology or 2004's The Tipping Point, and the majority of the time when I see a ranking for all of these LPs, those two releases usually frequent the bottom half, but again, that's only relative to the rest of their output, and if you were stacking these projects up against the work of a less reputable artist, they would probably fare much better. However, once we crack the mid-2000s, things take more of an upward swing, as even though I enjoy both of those projects I just mentioned, they were really on fire for the remainder of the decade, releasing nothing but heat, beginning with 2006's Game Theory here, and continuing on to 2008's Rising Down, which was honestly extremely close to being the topic of today's video, as it's basically neck and neck with Game Theory here in my personal ranking. I just haven't managed to get it on vinyl yet. But we would also receive 2010's How I Got Over, and even though we haven't had any official studio releases from the Roots in about a decade at this point, that still isn't even accounting for the quality albums they pumped out in the early 2010s, like 2011's Undone or 2014's And Then You Shoot Your Cousin, plus various soundtracks and other collaborations with the likes of John Legend and Elvis Costello. I absolutely love the way this album sounds, with expansive instrumentals that range from soul and R&B to hard-hitting grimy boom bap, and if you're even remotely familiar with the Roots catalog, it should come as no surprise that lead MC Black Thought is completely on top of his game here, as he's one of those rare examples of an MC who just never fails to miss and has seemed to steadily progress with age. You could really go with any track here to exemplify his lyrical ability, but I want to focus on the song Clock with No Hands, as it has my favorite beat on the entire LP, which actually utilizes the same sample that would go on to be pulled for Kendrick Lamar's P&P 1.5 off of the Overly Dedicated mixtape. But in this version, Thought really gives us a masterclass in how to pen a clever, introspective, and personal verse that's still chock full of wordplay and double entendres. He kicks off this highlight rapping, "Yeah, sitting in the staircase, holding back tears, looking over mad years worth of photographs, pictures of some places I ain't never going back." Some people I used to love, why I ain't show 'em that. The skies was overcast when I was sober last. My head is spinning, couldn't tell you if it's slow or fast. It's starting to get too clear, I got to go and grab. To y'all it's a shame, but life is what we know it as. Waiting, navigating the plot without plans in the cards. It's hard to read as a clock with no hands. How your man's gonna get up his stock with no yams? All it take is one break, it could pop the program. Whether sinning or not, my back bending like I'm sending Salat. I feel some brothers is beginning to plot. It might have been a close friend I forgot, who started up and ain't remember to stop. I bet these rappers gon' remember the shop. You may have expected all the instrumentation on here to be handled by the Roots themselves, but while they certainly played a big role, they actually had a team of talented producers who helped make this thing happen, including Owen Biddle, Richard Nichols, the Randy Watson Experience, and the late legend Jay Dilla. As for guest appearances, we have a good handful of contributors who lent their talents to Game Theory, and this roster was made up of Wadud Ahmad, Maimuna Youssef, Horn, Dice Raw, John, Petey Petey, Bunny Siegler, Mercedes Martinez, Jack Davey, and Truck North. For my overall top 3 favorite songs on this one, I think I'd ultimately have to go with Take It There, Can't Stop This, and Clock with No Hands. As for my honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top of the list, I still want to shout out tracks like Game Theory, False Media, Don't Feel Right, In the Music, Long Time, Here I Come Baby, and Atonement. Thank you for watching my 338th video. Next up, we have another icon who's basically a veteran of the page at this point. So check in for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments are off this career highlight. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.